Have you ever opened your phone, stared at a message and thought, I can't deal with this right now, and then never dealt with it at all? Not because you hated the person, not because you didn't care, but because something inside you just felt tired. Or maybe you've been on the other side. Someone you thought you were close to slowly stopped replying. They canceled once, then twice. Then they just faded. No big argument, no dramatic exit. Just silence that stretched longer and longer until it became the new normal. From the outside, it's easy to label it immature, toxic, dramatic, ghosting. But psychologically, when someone suddenly disappears from everyone, it's usually not about cruelty. It's about overwhelm. Let's slow this down and look at it like humans, not headlines. Imagine your mind as a room that hasn't been cleaned in months. There are half-finished projects on the desk, old emotional boxes you never unpacked, a chair full of responsibilities, a blinking notification light in the corner that never turns off. Now someone knocks on the door and says, "Hey, can I come in? Let's talk." If you feel grounded and okay, you open the door. But if the room is chaos and you're already exhausted, even someone you love can feel like one more thing. That's the part people don't see. When the nervous system is overloaded, connection can feel like pressure instead of comfort. Psychologists talk about the stress response as fight, flight, or freeze. We all know fight. We know flight. But freeze is quieter. Freeze is when your system says, I can't fight this. I can't run from it. I'm going to shut down. Withdrawal is often a freeze response. When someone disappears, sometimes their brain is in survival mode. Not dramatic survival, not life or death survival, but emotional survival. The kind where your capacity feels maxed out, and even simple interactions feel heavy. You might think, but if they cared, they would have reached out. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Caring and capacity are not the same thing. You can deeply care about someone and still not have the energy to show up. Depression is a perfect example of this. One of its core symptoms isn't just sadness, it's withdrawal, a loss of energy for social interaction. Even answering a text can feel like lifting weights. And when you feel ashamed for being distant, you withdraw more. It becomes a loop. You don't respond because you feel low. Then you feel guilty for not responding. Then you avoid even harder because now there's guilt attached. Have you ever told yourself, it's been too long to reply now? And the longer it goes, the more awkward it feels to come back? That's shame at work. Shame whispers, they'll think you're rude. They'll think you don't care. You messed this up. And instead of repairing, you disappear to avoid the discomfort. It's not logical. It's human. There's also attachment patterns to consider. Some people learned early on that depending on others wasn't safe. Maybe their needs weren't met consistently. Maybe vulnerability was dismissed. So, when stress hits, their instinct isn't to lean into connection. It's to lean away. If you grew up thinking, I handle things on my own, then disappearing can feel natural when you're struggling. You don't even consciously decide to do it. You just retreat. And sometimes it's not trauma or depression. Sometimes it's identity. Life transitions can quietly rearrange who you are. A breakup, a new job, a spiritual shift. Moving cities, losing someone. Finding a new version of yourself. When you're in that in-between space, no longer who you were, not yet who you're becoming, being around people who knew the old you can feel strange. It's like wearing clothes that don't fit anymore. Not bad clothes, just not yours. So, you pull back. You tell yourself you'll reconnect when you figure things out. But figuring things out takes longer than expected, and distance grows. There's even a developmental idea called a psychological moratorium, where people step back from roles and expectations while they reconstruct their identity. We think of this as something teenagers do, but adults do it too, quietly. Sometimes disappearing is someone building a cocoon. The problem is, from the outside, it looks like rejection. And rejection hurts in a very real, physical way. Brain scans show that social rejection activates the same pain pathways as physical injury. So, when someone vanishes, your brain doesn't just go, oh, okay. It goes, this is a threat. Your mind scrambles for meaning. Did I say something wrong? Was I too much? Not enough? Did I misread everything? Humans hate unanswered questions, so we invent answers. and the answers are usually about our worth, but often the disappearance has more to do with their internal storm than your value. There's another layer here that we don't talk about enough: performance. In many social circles, we play roles: the funny one, the reliable one, the strong one, the advice giver, the easygoing one. What happens when you can't perform your role anymore? If you're the strong friend and suddenly you're falling apart, showing up might feel exposing. If you're the fun one but you're burnt out, hanging out feels like acting. So instead of showing a version of yourself that feels broken or inconsistent, you step back entirely. It feels safer to disappear than to be seen differently. Burnout amplifies this. Chronic stress changes how the brain processes interaction. When cortisol stays elevated for long periods, your brain shifts into energy conservation mode. Everything unnecessary feels like a drain, and sadly, socializing can start to feel unnecessary. Not because it is, but because your system is just trying to survive. Now, let's talk about avoidance. Some people disappear because they don't know how to have hard conversations. They don't know how to say, "This isn't working," or "I feel hurt," or "I need space." So instead of confronting discomfort, they fade out. Modern technology makes this easier than ever. You can mute someone, ignore notifications, leave messages on read. The friction of disappearing is low, but avoidance doesn't mean someone is heartless. It often means they're conflict averse. They fear emotional intensity. Silence feels safer than vulnerability. None of this excuses hurtful behavior. Disappearing without communication can be painful. But understanding the psychology gives us context, and context softens self-blame. If you've been the one left behind, your pain is valid. It makes sense that you'd feel confused or rejected. But their withdrawal might not be a statement about your worth. It might be a reflection of their capacity. If you've been the one who disappeared, you're not automatically a villain. You might have been overwhelmed, ashamed, burnt out, changing, protecting yourself in the only way you knew how. Here's a question that shifts everything. What were you trying to protect? Your peace, your pride, your energy, your unprocessed grief? Disappearing is often protection that went silent. And here's another truth. Sometimes we disappear because we've outgrown a space but don't know how to articulate it. Growth can feel lonely. When your values shift or your goals change, old dynamics can feel misaligned. Not wrong, just misaligned. But ending or reshaping relationships requires courage. It requires clarity. It requires risking someone being upset. So some people choose the path of least resistance. They slip away quietly. It's messy. It's imperfect. But it's human. The deeper lesson here isn't about labeling disappearances as good or bad. It's about noticing patterns. Do you disappear when overwhelmed instead of asking for help? Do you cling tighter when someone pulls away, fearing abandonment? Do you interpret silence as proof you're unlovable? Awareness is the beginning of choice. If you feel the urge to disappear from everyone, maybe you don't need to vanish completely. Maybe you just need to reduce your world temporarily. Maybe it's one honest message. I'm going through something and I don't have much capacity right now, but I care about you. That single sentence can prevent months of misunderstanding. And if someone has disappeared on you, maybe closure doesn't always come from their explanation. Sometimes closure is realizing that humans retreat when they don't know how to integrate what they're feeling. We are not robots. We are nervous systems walking around in bodies trying to manage stress, identity, connection, and fear all at once. Sometimes disappearing is not a declaration of indifference. Sometimes it's a sign that someone doesn't know how to be seen in their current state. And here's the hopeful part. Patterns are not destiny. If you recognize yourself in this, either as the one who vanishes or the one who feels abandoned, you're already doing something different. You're observing instead of reacting blindly. You don't have to disappear to survive. You can learn to communicate before the shutdown happens. And you don't have to internalize someone else's disappearance as proof that you weren't enough. Maybe they were overwhelmed. Maybe they were rebuilding. Maybe they were protecting something fragile inside themselves. Or maybe they simply didn't have the emotional skills yet. And that's not a verdict on your worth. So I'm curious, have you ever suddenly pulled away from everyone? What was really happening inside you at the time? Or have you been left wondering what you did wrong? Let's talk about it in the comments. These conversations matter more than we think. And if this helped you understand your own patterns a little more gently, stick around. The more you understand your mind, the less controlled you are by its automatic reactions. Sometimes disappearing is a nervous system trying to cope, but awareness, that's how we find our way back.